We're going to start recording. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm going to pick up where I started off with React last time, the Scrimba course. And we'll see how far we get into the section. Maybe we'll finish it today. Maybe we won't. But I don't think we have too many parts left. And I think today we'll just finish this section and we'll go from there. That's a good plan to go from to start with.
Earlier in the course, we saw how we could get a local React app up and running just using that in-browser Babel transpiler. Of course, at the same time, we also saw that it sent us a warning that said, essentially, you really shouldn't do it this way in production. This is okay for now, but eventually you'll want to do something different. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how we can use Vite, which is a tool that we'll use to actually create a local React app. This way, it will be a lot more primed for actually bundling and pushing something to production eventually if you were creating some kind of app that you actually wanted to deploy. As a tool, Vite will take care of the transpilation or the compilation phase, which is what will take our more updated versions of JavaScript that we get to write as developers and translate it into something that is more widely supported amongst all the major browsers out there. And it will also take care of the bundling. I've put here a list of some popular bundlers, and if we were to dive into the details of it, Webpack, Parcel, and Rollup are all bundling systems, whereas ESBuild will use a more updated way to use ES modules and really deploy something in a much quicker way. Under the hood, Vite is going to use ESBuild, which gives Vite such a fast response time when you're just developing locally. If any of you have used Create React App in the past, you'll know that when you run your npm install and npm start after using Create React App to get everything set up, it oftentimes will take somewhere between 30 seconds or even up to maybe 2 minutes or more to get things running. With Vite using ESBuild under the hood, we're going to see it take a matter of seconds instead of minutes, which is an amazing improvement in the developer experience. So that's enough of me blabbing. Let's move forward and see how we can actually do this. You can click this screenshot here, which will take you to the Vite homepage, and it is pronounced Vite, which is
so we're going to have to install Vite then.
Fast. And in order to actually use Vite, you will need to make sure that you have Node and npm installed on your machine.
Not
you
a
can
big
do
deal.
this by opening your terminal and typing node -v to check for a version of Node. If you do have Node, it will spit out some kind of version. It likely won't be this same version that I got when I took this screenshot. And usually if you have Node, you will also automatically have npm, but just in case, you can also run npm -v to make sure that it spits out a version there. If you do not have Node or npm installed, you can follow the instructions that we'll talk about next. If you do, then you can kind of gloss over these next few steps. Now, I'm not actually going to show you how to install Node because there's a million YouTube videos out there that you can use. If you click on this screenshot, it will take you directly to this search, install Node.js with NVM. And that's the important part. I really recommend people install Node.js using NVM, which is short for the Node Version Manager. I've also set it up here so that you can click on this screenshot if you want to install it on macOS. There.
I'm going to skip over this.
Is specific to Mac and Linux. It is slightly different for Windows. It's probably
if necessary,
not going to be these exact same versions that it was for me when I recorded this. Okay, with installing Node and npm out of the way, we're ready to use Vite. If you click the screenshot here, it will take you to the Getting Started page on Vite's website. But the important part here is that in your terminal, you will type npm create Vite at latest. Make sure not to include this $sign. That's just the prompt that's already in your terminal. And when you do that, it's going to use Vite to ask a couple questions on your project. You can give your project its own name. Then it will have you select a framework. We're going to be using React. Once you select React, you can choose whether you want just vanilla JavaScript React or React with TypeScript. For our purposes in this course, we'll just be using React without TypeScript. And once it's done, which believe me, it will happen very quickly, it's going to give you some instructions.
Are not working.
And so you'll just type in these 3 instructions as 3 separate commands in your terminal. When you do that, you should get something similar to this, where it will install all the associated packages with your React app, and it will get things up and running. To run it, you'll write npm run dev, which is that 3rd instruction down there. And what's amazing about this is you can see that it was able to spin everything up in just over 1 second. That's truly incredible. If you've ever used Create React App, it's amazing. Now, if you go to localhost 3000 in a browser, you'll see the default app that spins up automatically. This has the code from Vite that is a bit of boilerplate code.
Let's see. Did this create anything? Nope. It is running something. Close anyway. Sure. Let's redo that in our VS code then. All right. That is. We'll create a terminal. And instead of delete code, we'll go cd dot dot or cd desktop. Can I? No. So cd dot dot. I'm gonna have to figure out how to. All right. So we'll step out twice, and then it's npm create read at latest, right? Okay. Sure, we'll use that. Okay, so my arrows work here. Will be vanilla and JavaScript. I think that's what he said. Right?
It's going to give you some instructions. And so you'll just type in these 3 instructions as 3 separate commands in your terminal. When you do that, you should get something.
I see. He said React and React. So one more time. Vite project, Vite React, we'll call it. And we'll say React. What did this framework React select a variant? We'll just say JavaScript. Okay. cd vite react npm install, and then npm run dev or run start run dev. Let's see. What does it come back with? It says Vite. Oh, it compiled it very quick. Oh my goodness. 982 milliseconds. Localhost 5173. Let's see. 5173. And there we go. Counters. And it has a counter. Cool. Now let's start this up again.
It will happen very quickly. It's going to give you some instructions. And so you'll just type in these 3 instructions as 3 separate commands in your terminal.
Are you a student or are you a teacher?
Get something similar to this where it will.
That's a great question. Am I a student or am I a teacher? I guess I am always learning and trying to teach along the way. Sorry, it's not a great answer, but like I'm not in school, but I'm like teaching myself web development on a more professional level and that deepening my knowledge. But then also at the same time trying to share my experience so that somebody might learn from it. Angular, welcome to the stream. Welcome back to the stream.
Will install all the associated packages with your React app, and it will get things up and running. To run it, you'll write npm run dev, which is that 3rd instruction down there. And what's amazing about this is you can see that it was able to spin everything up in just over 1 second. That's truly incredible. If you've ever used Create React App, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to localhost 3000 in a browser, you'll see the default app that spins up automatically. This has the code from Vite that is a bit of boilerplate code. At this point, you're welcome to essentially delete everything or just to work within the system that it gave you.
Sounds
now,
good.
Let's say, for example, I wanted to change the default logo from this React logo to be a Scrimba logo. All I have to do is change my logo PNG to something else. I, of course, have to have this inside of my project. The / means that it's in the same folder as my app.jsx file. And just like regular development, I can add things like a new paragraph tag. So now I have the Scrimba logo and a little paragraph that says, "Hello, Scrimba React students." Some of you might be looking at this line 3 that says import logo from scrimbalogo.png and wondering what the heck is going on there. In fact, if you look down here on line 12, it says that the source is equal to logo. This might seem a little strange if your only exposure to React has been here inside of Scrimba. However, this is the way that you would end up doing this if you're developing React locally. The reason is because when these files get all bundled and squished together into a single JavaScript file, any path that you may have included is going to be different in the bundled version. By importing our...
I think we have a little bit of a traffic jam happening. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Look at this. So I have a cat bed, and Al is sleeping on there, and Ed wants to sleep on the cat bed. But now, Ed is sleeping on my mouse. All right. Cool. It's Al and Ed. Hi, buddy. Like, what am I supposed to do? Oh, man. Let me see here. I'm going to snap a photo, and we'll post it on Twitter as the thing is playing. Come on. Yeah, there you go, buddy.
Our images, we're able to teach the bundler in the final version that we end up bundling for production where to actually find those. And it will readjust those paths according to its needs. If that doesn't make sense,
No.
honestly, that's perfectly okay. It's just important to know that if you're
it's
following
short for all
along in
fonts.
your local environment with what we're doing in Scrimba, anytime you see me use a relative path alone, maybe directly in my source, you're going to have to take one extra step and import the image from that relative path.
I see.
Name here, logo, this is not important. You could call it blah, blah, blah if you wanted, as long as you then set your image source to blah, blah, blah. It's just a variable name. So once again, the first thing you would do is to import whatever your image is and give it a name from your relative path, and then to set your image source to be whatever that name you gave it. Now, let's see this in action just to really reinforce what we're learning here. Let's say I wanted to add an image of a pizza. The first thing I would have to do is to import that pizza logo, which I can call it whatever. I've chosen pizza here, from pizza.png. You can see in my file tree, I actually have that image here, pizza.png. And then down in the image, I simply set the source equal to my curly brackets with the variable name that I chose when I was importing it. And it's as simple as that. I've added some styling here to make sure it wasn't an overly large image, but that's a completely separate story. Well, actually referring to that, I did that styling by adding an inline style tag here just for simplicity. But while we're at it, let's talk about importing styles as well. You may have noticed this line down below that just says import./app.css, and that might look a little bit strange. But the concept is essentially the same. Under the hood, this is teaching the bundler how to find the correct CSS file. When I import the CSS file name, and you'll notice I don't even have to give it a variable name like I did with my images, it will teach the bundler how to find that CSS file and make sure that it is applied to any JavaScript in the React tree below this point. I'm not at this time going to dive deep into how to do modularized styles and everything like that. For now, it's important to know that if I do have a CSS file that I want to associate with my React app, I will at some point need to import it just like you see here. Okay, I know we covered a lot, but now you should be all set. I hope that you've had a chance to follow along with this, and if not, I'd recommend going back and rewatching this, seeing how you can spin up a local React app using Vite, because doing so is just going to make you that much more experienced in what the real workflow is going to look like. Now, I still recommend that you do all of the little mini challenges and everything that we give you directly here in the Scrimba environment. And that's because I'm going to have things set up perfectly for you.
You're sitting on my...
I really want you to be focusing on learning the syntax of React and not necessarily worrying about all of the tooling that's required behind the scenes
on my space
to get it to work locally. That said, I do want you to practice with it. You could decide to do your solo projects maybe as a local React app that you set up with Vite, and then do all of the other challenges that I give you directly here in the Scrimba environment. I'm going to leave that up to you to whatever makes the most sense for your own learning. Okay, that was a really big but still pretty important aside. Let's jump right back into learning more React.
Oh, cool. Okay, so that wasn't even actually part of the course then. It was just setting up React with Vite. Okay.
One thing that I really like
I
to
think
do
Ed
when
has
I'm
finally found a
starting a new
seat. I
project,
put him on the chair
especially
next
if
to
I
me,
have the
and we are
design
able
right
to
in
pick
front
up
of me
again.
like we do here, is to make a sort of mental outline of the elements on the page and how I'm going to lay this project out. All that really helps me do is to make a sort of mental model of how I'm going to create everything on the page. This can be especially helpful when you're thinking about layout and how you're going to place certain elements in the right spot on the page, especially when you start thinking in terms of using Flexbox or Grid to do that kind of layout. So as a first sort of mini challenge, what I want you to do is pause the screencast and look at this page, try to determine what kind of elements you would use, what kinds of CSS layouts you might use. Fortunately, this project has a fairly simple layout, but I still think that it's something that will be helpful for you to practice. So pause the screencast and try to imagine what elements you would use and how you would lay them out for this project.
All right, that's not bad. So, here's how I would break it down. Right, you have a top bar here. A top bar can be an element that you are importing, and in your top bar you have an image source, and then maybe like a span or a paragraph for your logo. Over here you would just have like a paragraph, because this can also be like an H3 and this is an H4, and this could be an H1. Fun facts about React: this could also be like a page that you load in, a page that would have a component that is imported. And in this page here, you have an H1 and an unordered list with list items. And in each list item, you have a paragraph indicating what each list item content is. Content is showing the content. That's how I would go about it.
There's certainly more than one way to lay out any given page, but the way that I see this is having two primary sections: the top section, which is sort of a nav bar, and the bottom section, which is sort of the main content. Inside that nav bar, we have a little React logo, the React Facts logo text up here, and then a little blurb about what project this is in this course.
Yeah.
Already, I can start to see that I'm probably going to choose to lay this out with Flexbox, because that's a really easy
right,
way
I
to
didn't
make
mention
sure everything's in
Flexbox.
a nice, neat line. And with Flexbox, all I need to do to push this text all the way to the right is to give an auto margin to my React Facts text here, or rather a margin right of auto, so that it pushes this React Course Project 1 text all the way to the right side of my navigation bar.
Oh,
Then
interesting.
down below,
Okay.
it looks like I just have an H1 and an unordered list with some list items. So with this kind of mental outline, I can start putting together what the actual elements will look like on the page. I usually end up creating some kind of container div, so we'll call it a div with the class of container, and this will just surround my whole page. And then we have our main two sections, that nav bar, which we saw at the top, and the main section. Inside the nav bar, we had a couple elements like the image, and then maybe let's call the React
H3 and H4.
H3, and this React Course Project 1 an H4. And then in the main section, there was our H1 and an unordered list with some list items inside.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of React, this can be a really helpful exercise because I can start to see that I will probably have two main components. First, a custom nav component, which will house my nav element with its children elements.
Yeah.
And second, a main custom component, which will house my H1 and my unordered list with the list items.
Yeah.
In terms of those nested items, like the image and H3, those are going to be simple enough that they won't need their own custom React component. And then I would take my custom nav component and my custom main component and probably collect them together in one more custom component, which I usually end up calling app.
Yeah.
And that will be what renders my div with the class of container. And then that app component, since it contains all the elements on my project, will then be rendered with React DOM.render.
Yeah.
So I hope this has been a helpful exercise for you, at least to see the way that I usually like to break down my projects.
Cool.
If it's a layout that's fairly basic like this, I usually will just kind of think about it ahead of time without actually writing it down or putting a bunch of dotted squares around the elements or anything like that. But once you've practiced this enough times, a simple layout like this might take you a total of maybe 10 seconds to think through, but in the end could end up saving you a lot of time. So now it's time for us to get your hands on the keyboard. We're going to have a series of challenges, which will help you be the one that actually builds out this project.
Nice. I'm excited. let's set up the project. So far, so good, by the way. Like, it's just been some easy just watching, nothing too serious.
Let's start by getting some of the project setup out of the way.
Okay.
I've written some step-by-step instructions here in the challenge. It is
Okay.
going to be a little bit more involved because we're creating everything completely from scratch, or
Cool.
almost completely from scratch. So your challenge is to create a components folder,
Yeah.
and this components folder is going to have two files in it, the navbar.js file and the main.js file.
Yeah.
For now, they should just render an H1 that says something like navbar goes here and main section here.
Okay.
Then I want you to create an app component, which will be outside of the components folder, and have the app component render the navbar and main components that you just created. Then inside of this file, the index.js, you will import the app component and then use React DOM.render to render that. The last step is to go and get the enter Google font, specifically with the weights of 400, 600, and 700. Once you've selected those font weights, you should see a series of link tags that you can use to put inside of our index.html.
Yeah.
Make sure to put them above style.css so that we can reference them in style.css. And if you haven't used Google Fonts before, this one might take a little bit of extra research outside of Scrimba here to learn more about. But I know that you can do it. Fortunately, Google Fonts makes it relatively easy. Just know that you can ignore the @import or any npm options it talks about for installing this font. Remember, we're not dealing with any kind of styling right now, so by the end of this challenge, you'll just have a basic white page that just shows navbar here and main section here or something like that. So pause now and work on this challenge.
Cool. All right, chat. Let's tackle this head on. So let's see here. We have a project set up. Create a components folder. In here, we're going to do a new folder, and it's going to call it components. Components, yeah. And we're going to create in our components main.js is what they called it, and navbar.js. Right? Create a components folder, and then in the folder, two separate files. In each one, render an H1 with the name of the component and return the H1. Okay. Cool. Let's see if we remember how to do this, because this is going to recall that we're going to need to do some active recall. Let's start off with our navbar. So we're going to import React from React. I don't need to do a render in this. So what are we doing? We're going to do export function navbar. And in this navbar, it'll return an H1 that says navbar goes here, and we'll close this H1 tag. Okay? I'll copy this. I'll paste it in main. We're going to call this main and main. Okay? Now, let's go to our next step. So create the folder, yeah, with the components, and each one render an H1, yeah, navbar and main. So now create an app component outside of the components folder. So we're going to create a new file and call it app.js. See, it sits outside of the components folder. Sibling to the index.js file. Have app render the navbar and main components. Okay, so I think this is how we're going to have to do it. Import. Oh. Yeah, React from React. Oh, if I'm importing it here, then I might not have to import them here. Right? Because this is going to render everything on the inside. So if it's rendering everything on the inside, we can do import React from React, and we'll continue with import React DOM from React-DOM. Okay. We need to import two more things. Import main from this same file, and then components / main, and then import navbar from the same thing, components / navbar. Oh. What are these filthy semicolons? Cool. So now that we have everything imported, we'll say, const app, and we're going to return inside of a div, because we can only return one component. We'll see if this works. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head if this is it, but we'll do main, and above it, navbar. And then it's React DOM.render. And what are we rendering? It's app and not const function. Element document dot get element by ID. And do we have a root folder? We do have a root folder. Root. And I think this should run something for us. What's the console saying? Console's not saying anything. Okay, well, let's finish the thing here. Import the render and render the app component inside of index.js. Oh, inside of index.js. Okay. So if we are doing this inside of index.js, we have to export this. Create an app component outside of the components folder and have app render the navbar and the main components. Yeah. Import and render the app component inside of index.js. So we will import it here. Import app from app, right? And at this point, you should have navbar goes here, etc., showing up in the mini browser. It's going to be React DOM.render. I wonder if I can do this like that. App and document dot get element by ID, and we'll do root. Now, if I run this, yeah. So if I do this, then, and in here, will this work? All right, we are getting an error, which is the first step. React.createElement type is invalid. Expected a string for built-in components or a class function, composite components, but got undefined. You likely forgot to export your function from the file it's defined in. Or you might have mixed up default named imports. Oh. Let me just fix that. Export default navbar. Right? And same thing here. We'll get rid of this. And export default and main. Now let's see. If I do this, will this work? The above error occurred in the app component. Consider adding an error boundary to your tree to customize error handling behavior. Happened in app. Okay. Unknown error. Export, default. I want to build a web agency. Do you think there is demand for this kind of business? Oh, 100%. There's definitely demand in this, especially after COVID. After COVID, everybody has to move their businesses online, and companies that don't get their businesses online are going to suffer. Well, I don't want to say suffer. A lot of them will succeed without a website online, but chances are, if they want an impact in their local community, they will need a website of sorts, and a lot of websites are outdated, right? Some might not have someone to update their outdated websites. There's a bunch of things that you can do with it. Export default app. Function app. Return. Yeah. Yeah. Function app. Yeah. Return the div navbar main. Export default class. React app extends this. No. Export default function React app. Yeah. I think I have to put curly braces around these things now. A lot of restaurants I visit have really bad and ugly websites. While the restaurant's making really good money, I always think why don't they invest in their website to make it look more professional? I think that's a great that's a great point that you bring up, Angular. I think what you should do is, if you notice that you are at a local business, and you enjoy their food or their services, and you notice that their website could use a little bit of improvement, what you can do is you could spin it in such a way that you're like, hey, I really enjoy your product, and like, I think you guys have a great set of services. I was browsing your website. I'm a software developer, and I was browsing your website, and I noticed that your website leaves a lot to be desired, and I think you are losing out on a lot of business um, by having a website that is hard to navigate. And so I think that if you spend a little bit of money on a website and improve like the visibility, it will improve the visibility on your business. It will increase the SEO. Customers will know what you serve ahead of time, and it reflects well on the business itself. So you can always spin it in a sense to, um, you can always spin it so that like, you are providing a service that will assist their business, right? Like, that is what you should be focusing on. Okay, but let's see what's going on here. Import React DOM, React. Maybe I just need to do, instead of carrying it through, we'll do import React from React. I think, okay. So something is off. It doesn't even tell me the line though. Check the render method. Why do I need a render method in my app? Okay. Yeah, I guess it was just because of the import React and import React. Import React has, because of the under the hood stuff that is happening on Scrimba, it was giving me an issue, but at least everything is working. So the navbar goes here and the main goes here. Okay, cool. Let's continue going. If anybody had any questions, by the way, or any points that they needed clarified,
Okay,
speak up
let's just
whenever.
go one step at a time. We'll first create a new folder called components. And inside components, we can create a new file for main.js and navbar.js. As always, we will import React from React, and we will export default our navbar function, our navbar component. And for now, this is just going to return an h1 that, let's have it say navbar component. Then our main.js is going to be almost identical. We'll just copy this, paste it in, and instead of navbar component, we'll say main component, and we'll call this element the main element. Okay, I'll hit save. This is just going to bring up my preview window, but that's still empty. So I need to create a new file called app.js. And inside of app.js, again, we'll import React from React. We'll also import our navbar component from ./components/navbar. And we'll do the same thing for main. So I'll just duplicate that line and change navbar to main.
Nice.
Then this app component,
Everything
we will
seems
export directly here
similar
with
to what we've done so far.
default function app. And we will just have this return.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
Well, we want our navbar to be in here. So we'll say navbar, and we want our main component to be in here. But I want you to think for a second, what's wrong with the way that I've done this? We can see there's a syntax error. So what's wrong with the way that I've set this up?
Before I move forward, chat, if anyone is in here, what's wrong with this? 3, 2, 1. React can only render one component at a time. And since we have navbar and main without a parent component, essentially what will happen is we face an error. So the best way to overcome this is to stick these either into a React component or a div.
Inside of components, we can only return a single element. That element can have children elements, but right now we're trying to have two sort of side-by-side components. So what we need to do is wrap those in some kind of container like a div. So I'll move this div around and indent those. If you remember from the last screencast, we talked about how this would probably just be set up as a container. So we'll give it a class name of container. We're not going to deal with any styling now, but I might as well add that class name since I know I'm going to need it. Okay, let's go check out our challenge and see where we are so far. So I created a components folder. I created the navbar and main components already.
Yeah.
I created my app component, which is rendering the navbar and main components.
Yeah.
So here we are. Let's import and render the app component here. I will import app from ./app. Oh, and I am going to be using some JSX syntax, so I also need to import React from React. And in our index.js, I will also be using React DOM. So I need to import React DOM from React DOM.
Yeah.
And then I'll use React DOM.render to render my app component, which I just imported. We're going to put it inside of the element with the ID of root. So we'll use document.getElementById root.
Yeah.
And let's hit save and see if we get our elements showing up on the page.
Nice.
Awesome.
It worked.
Navbar component, main component, just like we expected. Okay, so that completes this part of the challenge. And then the last thing was to go to Google Fonts to get the Inter
Thank you
font.
for the follow. I
Hopefully
appreciate
this
it.
wasn't too terribly tricky. Going to Google Fonts will give you a couple link elements. So I'm just going into my index.html. And above my style.css, I will just paste in those link
Yeah,
elements.
we did
You
forget
can
to
see
bring
that
in
we have this
the
pre-connect
font.
to Google Fonts. This one.
Actually, let me do that right now. So we're gonna go to Google Fonts, and in my index.js here, we're gonna go back to Back here, Google Fonts, you get the Inter font with weights 400, 600, and 700. So I'm going to demonstrate this just because some people may experience a little bit of issues or they don't know how to do it. So we're going to do that. Source Sense Pro, I'm going to clear all of this. So this is what your Google Fonts webpage should look like, right? Nothing here on the side under selected family, and you have a bunch of fonts that you can choose from. We're going to be looking for the Inter font. Click on it right there. Okay. And 400. Yeah. So what do we need? We need 400, 600, and 700. 400 at regular, 600. And by the way, all I did was I scrolled down and 700. And just right here on the side, you'll see that what we'll do is you can choose either an import or a link. And I'm just going to copy all of these right here. Or you can just press this button right here on the bottom. And in your style.css, no, in your index.html, and above your style.css, enter here, paste those there, and we'll tab, and there we go. Now we should have, if I run this again, nothing's changing. What's happening? Did I forget? I may have import. Style. No, I think style.css goes into my app, right? Import. Style.css. No. Okay. Well, what did we do? What did he do here?
Fonts.
We'll watch and see where he puts it.
Static, but then this one is for our actual fonts. Here you can see the font
Carsey.
family is Inter,
Yeah.
and it shows
Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate
400, 600, and 700 there. Again, I'm putting this above my style.css so that inside of my style.css, I can reference the font family of Inter, and my browser will have already read these other link tags to know exactly what the Inter font is. Okay, let's go back here, and we have finished everything from this challenge. I'll just do a little bit of cleanup. Now, we did just cover a lot of ground. However, every step that we did here was something that you...
So I don't think it really needs to be imported anywhere. And I guess it's just immediately working out since this is the same font.
should have already been able to do. Maybe with exceptions to the Google Fonts if you've never dealt with Google Fonts before.
But yeah,
so if you did
that was a quick tutorial on Google Fonts.
Basic setup done, that might be a good signal to you that it's time to go back and restudy and especially re-practice some of the past challenges that we've done instead of just kind of plowing ahead in this course. The reason for that is because I'm essentially going to assume that you understood how this works from here on. And the last thing that I would want for you as you're learning React is to just continue on without actually having learned some of these basic setup principles. Okay, let's jump into maybe something a little more fun, and that is adding some actual styling and elements to our project.
Right.
But before we move on, I wanted to give you one more opportunity to access the Figma design file. We talked about this much earlier in this section, but since it's been a while, I figured this would be a good reminder.
Stair Droids, welcome to the stream. And yes, Scrimba is free.
Where you can get access
it
to
has
the
a pro and a free version.
Colors, the spacing, the fonts, and everything like that. When you click on this link, it will take you to a shared version of this. However, if you'd like, you can avoid seeing everyone else's cursors and selections by clicking on the little arrow at the top and choosing to duplicate this to your drafts.
Yeah.
That'll make it so that you aren't seeing everyone else's cursors and selections, but also so that you can make changes to it if you'd like. Okay, let's do it. Let's jump right in and start working on the navbar portion of our project.
So the fourth project, are you saying like you're on building the Notes app in the Tenzies game? Is that what you mean? Oh, okay. So it starts to become a much 5 hours to build a meme generator. Look at that. Oh, so I have my work cut out for me. This project is going to take me a while then, eh? Learned a bit of CSS, eh? Okay, well, let's keep going then. I'm excited. I've been doing this in 2-hour chunks, and it feels like, it's been taking much longer than that because this doesn't end up being 120 minutes, that's for sure. Times 2. Because I'm already two parts in. This is part number 3 of the course of me doing it. So
Hey
we'll
there.
take our time.
I'm jumping
We're
in
gonna
at this point to let
we're gonna
you know
upload it to YouTube. We'll take care of it. If anybody wants to watch and then go back and see again, it's packed full of info. I'm gonna demonstrate how I do stuff and add it to Anki on stream. So we're gonna take our time. We're gonna make sure everything is understood, everything goes well. What speed do you watch it at? I'm watching it at one times right now, so that when I upload it to YouTube, if people are want to speed things up, they can speed things up.
that I've created a very
But
quick
one-time speed
Figma
right now.
tutorial.
Hey, Mister,
Throughout
welcome back
this
to the
course
stream.
and many others here on Scrimba, we're going to
Nice
be
to see you
providing
again.
you with a Figma design file. And I do think you'll find Figma fairly intuitive, but I thought it would be a good idea to just record a quick tutorial to help you along. The first thing you'll have to do is go over to figma.com and create
I'm gonna skip
a new
over
account.
this.
And
We're gonna go straight to navbar and styling.
Okay, this is the fun part. We're actually
Nice.
going to make our navigation bar look the way that it looks in the design.
Okay.
A couple pieces of advice. I highly recommend you reference the Figma file that contains all of the fonts, colors, spacing, and everything instead of just looking at this quick reference that I've put here, but this is meant to be just a quick reference for you.
I'm gonna open Figma here on the
Another
side.
thing is I have added a couple of base styles to our styles.css. I ran into some problems trying to record this without putting my box sizing, and just because it helps a lot, I'm going to remove the margin on the body, especially to make our navigation bar go all the way to the edges. Also notice that I have included the React icon small image here inside of the images folder. You can see that's part of the design up here in the upper left. So without further ado, pause the screencast and make the navigation bar look as close to our design as you can.
Sounds good. Okay. So here we are. This is the file. And so to make it okay, we'll do this. And it says I should have all of the colors. Okay. And so, you know what I'll do is I'll do this. And we'll do this. Oh. No, that won't work. Okay. So, I'm supposed to recreate this navbar. And if I'm going to recreate the navbar, we're going to do dot navbar. Oop. Dot navbar. Okay. But before we do that, we're going to make sure that in here, we're going to have our class name, right? And that's because React is a little different. It is not class, but class name. So in navbar here, we want to make it look as close to this as possible. In here, we're going to change this. And we're going to have an image tag. And the source is what? Where are we right now? We are in the components folder. So we need to go up a folder, go into the images folder, and then we're going to do and then get the React icon. So if we go up a folder, we need to do 2 dots into the images folder, and then React icon small hyphen small.png, right? Close this tag, and I am missing something, which will be, we'll do this, we'll do this, and we'll do this to close it. We have an H3 that says it's going to be React Facts is the title of our webpage. React Facts. And we're going to close this H3. And then we have one last thing, which is going to be H4, and that was going to be React course -project 1. React course hyphen project 1. And we'll close our tag here too. Okay. Now, if I run this, we'll see that I did everything in main. I'm going to copy all of this and undo this all. And we're going to go into navbar and put it in the proper component. Oh, man. Sorry, what do the empty tags do? Oh, they don't do anything. I can do this. I can write them as div. So the reason why I have empty tags, it's because when you are doing a component render in React, React can only render one component at a time, right? So if I took this, or I can just do this and this, right? And I tried to run my app, it will break. So if I view my console, it will say here that the JSX element must be wrapped in an enclosing tag, right? And it's because you can't have 3 sibling elements be rendered by one React component. So, in order to overcome this, if you put in a div tag, right? Or if you put in just an empty React tag, what you will see is that the page will render, because now you have overcome the issue. But the thing is, I want to be able to style this, and I won't be able to style this with just an empty tag. I also want a class name for this. This is going to be navbar. Understood. Thank you for exposure to React. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad I could help. Right? So now that we have navbar, we're going to go back and start styling it. I'm going to do this quickly, and then I am going to make sure that they're all on the same row and pause there, because I have to take my break, and I believe I have ads running soon, so we'll just make sure we knock both of those out at the same time. So we'll just do display, flex, and then flex, direction, row. Okay. Justify content, and we'll say it's going to be center. No. Flex, start, and align items, center. Okay. Because we wanted to do that on the cross axes. Cool. So now that we have this all on the same line, I'm going to take my 5-minute break, and I'll see you guys soon. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ark, welcome, welcome. Happy to have you back at the stream. It's a long time. How have you been? How are things? Thank you for coming through. What we're doing is justify content. Let's just say if we say .navbar and everything inside, right? What I can do is I'll say margin left, maybe padding left. We'll say 0.25 em. Yeah, that should be fine. And if I do this .navbar, and if I target the H3, I'll say, and did they say it was padding right and it was auto? Margin right? Yeah, it was margin right. Cool. How have you been, Ark? Tell me. All right. So now, navbar, we're gonna need to give it a background color, which is this, right? So we'll say background color, and I need an octothorpe on the other side, okay? And the font for the image, if this targets everything and this targets H3, HI, okay, so images afterwards, so .navbar, and we'll say image, and we'll say color is, oh, the color's already, so we'll just say, how do you do transform scale? Right? Scale, CSS. Sorry, I was washing a dish. Yeah, bro, not much. Oh, shoot, you're in Croatia. What are you doing over there? Transform scale, okay. And I think it would be best if we just made it half the size. And what happens if I do this? I think I might be able to get rid of that. Okay. And so if my H3 is already targeted, I have to get, I think this is my color octothorpe, this, and we then have our h4.navbar and h4, and the color is what? This. Cool. Finding love and work in the opposite order. In the opposite order. Interesting. So are you... I am recording the session. Won't mention too much. Are you leaving where you currently are living to go search for something more permanent in Croatia? But I think for the most part, the only thing that is kind of iffy here is the gap between these two. But I think we have a fairly good... I can scale this maybe up a bit. Transform, scale, and we'll make it 10% bigger. Right? Maybe 20? 20% bigger. Cool. And I think that was the task, right? Just make the navbar look the same. And I would say, you know, fairly close. Just chilling with friends while I put myself out internationally.
All right, let's do this. Instead of rendering
Yeah, it
this
is.
one, I'm going to open this up and render a nav element.
How long are you there for?
A navigation bar.
Oh, shoot.
We know we have it.
Oh, shoot. Did I do that, really? I did. Put it in a div. Oh my goodness, it's been so long since I've... Another month for the meanwhile. Oh, nice.
An image. We'll give it its source while we're here. I have to use /images because I'm inside of the components folder when I'm here in the nav bar. And it's React icon small .png. Let's just refresh and see if that's working. Okay, cool. And let's call this maybe an H3, I guess, and maybe this an H4. It really doesn't matter because, well, you could just give it a class name and call it a paragraph, but I'll just call it an H3.
Yeah.
And H4. This one says React Facts, and this one says React Course -Project 1. Okay, refresh that, and we've got our elements on the screen. Now, we talked about earlier how the navbar will probably be a Flexbox container. So I think because I'm only going to have one nav element on my screen,
It's going well.
To style the element nav.
You know, I have a lot of inbound interest. I've been sharing a lot of my journey on my socials. You know, the Discord, I've been trying to keep busy with the Discord.
From the design, we can find that the background color
I had an interview
this color here.
Round 3 today with a company.
About 30 pixels
so, you know, fingers crossed.
On the top and bottom and 25 pixels of padding on the left and right. And we can also see from the design that it has a height of about 90 pixels.
We'll see.
Okay, so it doesn't look like our top and bottom margin is applying, and I suspect that's either because our image is a little bit too
100%.
large, or I think maybe more likely
I'll do that.
because
I don't mind.
Our H3 and H4 here have some top and bottom margin by default. So I think I might just select the H3 directly inside of the nav. Let's say margin is 0, and then let's see if that also works for the
How's Europe
H4.
though?
Okay, it might be that the image is just a little too large. Let's take a look at the image, and it looks like from the design it's got a height of about 30 pixels. Okay, so maybe our padding is doing fine, and
height
was
of
just
30
that the
pixels
image was a little bit large. While we're here dealing with
Where
the
am I
image,
supposed
I'm
to find
going
that?
to give it a margin right, just to bump it away from the text there a little bit. We'll say, I think the design shows it's about 7 pixels.
I'm not sure.
That looks pretty good.
Maybe
And
someone
let's
will be
go
able to
ahead
point me
and
one day.
Use the margin right of auto on our
Hoping for
H3
success. I'm hoping so too. I
just to
really
bump
appreciate
that
it.
H4 all the way to the right side.
It's
All right, well, while we're working on that,
so
we can
close
go
I can
ahead
taste
and
it,
give
dude.
the color to our React Facts. So we'll
You know,
say the color
like
is this color from the design. Okay, that does it.
Wild
for the
West
color.
feeling.
Let's get the fonts right. And actually, I think all of the fonts
like
on
the
this
people
page are
or
Inter, so I'm
or
just going to
the
change that
environment.
in the body. We'll say Inter, and then I think a backup.
Wild West feeling.
Sans serif makes sense. Let me just comment this out. Yeah.
Oh
okay,
yeah.
So that's making a difference. So awesome. Our Google fonts are coming through just fine. I can also see from the design that the React Facts.
That's why I didn't change in the previous page because we never actually assigned it in our CSS.
So we'll bold those up a little bit. Or maybe that's the default. Doesn't look like it's making much of a difference. And then let's do the same thing for our H4. It has this color from the design, and it looks like it has a font weight of 600. Okay, that's making a slight difference, so that's good. And it kind of looks to me like React Facts maybe needs to be a little bit bigger. And yeah, I can see from the design that it has a font size of something around 22 pixels. Okay, that's looking awesome. Now, when I can avoid it, I usually don't love to style things with
Like the
their native
people,
components.
it's like everyone is
if I
so
don't have
interesting
to.
and
Maybe
independent.
just for practice sake, I'm going to go into my navbar and I'll start providing
Independent
some
in
class
what
names here.
sense?
So let's give a class name to everything.
Like they're able to like live their lives,
Class
without
name
worrying too
equals,
much, sort
and
of thing,
then
or
up
what do you mean?
here, maybe I'll use something kind of like BEM syntax. I'll say this is part of the nav block, and the element is the icon. And then we'll say this is the nav block, and the element is it's kind of like the logo text. And this one is part of the nav.
So this was
and
just
let's
like a
call it
much more
maybe like
in-depth
the title of our project.
styling
And what's nice
video
about
than
that
I
is
did.
I don't have to do these kind of nested selectors anymore. My H3 was nav logo text, and I can also select my nav title and change these other selectors as well. And one thing I've learned about Scrimba is I have to make sure I save this when I change my class names before I come to the CSS. Otherwise, the CSS updates live, but the markup does not. So once I hit refresh there, that kind of put everything back the way it was. Awesome. This is a really excellent start. Frankly, most of what we did here was just CSS instead of actually doing React.
Color the bullets, add background logo.
Not just to focus
React section 1
React.
solo project. Deploy your React app with Netlify.
So far, including revisiting the CSS and markup and stuff like that as much as we can. Frankly, in this first section of the course, we aren't doing much of the detailed side of React. We mostly have learned some of the very basic
that's what I assumed you meant.
I think it's important for us to kind of remind ourselves of the past information we've learned by practicing it here.
I bet everyone has a lot more going on because they need it to survive.
Fill out the body section here, or the main section here. There's a couple of gotchas with this that we're going to actually address later. But if you feel good about everything we've done here in this challenge, then let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so let's see what's happening here.
Okay, let's work on this main section here. I do want you to skip 2 aspects of the design right now. We're not going to worry about changing the colors of these bullets.
Okay.
We're not going to worry yet about adding this logo over here to the right.
Okay.
Everything else, though, is fair game for this exercise, so pause the screencast and work on this task.
Okay. So let's see then. So we need to start a component. So we have an H1 and then an unordered list with a couple of bullet points. Unordered list. And then an H1. So let's build that. So we'll have an H1. Ooh, probably want to press into my editor. H1, and we'll say fun facts about React. And we'll close our H1 tag. Right? And then we have an... maybe we'll just do this. An unordered list and UL. And in here we'll have an LI, and we'll close the LI. And it looks like we have 5 bullet points. So the first one says, I'm just going to say BP1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, BP1. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. And it doesn't like something. The fact that they are sister elements. So we'll do, or sibling elements. This, we'll move all this in one, and we will close this div. Right? So now that we have this, we have do class name is equal to main. And in here, since main falls above nav, I'll just say dot main. Right? And we'll say padding maybe, so it's top, and then 15%. Maybe not padding, but margin. No, it doesn't like percent. Oh, he said something about saving. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that should be fine, honestly. We'll do like, we want it. Oh, that's too far out. So 5% then. And we want some more space from the top then? Yeah. We'll do 5% as well. Or just 5% all around, if that's the case. Okay. And so main, and then h1, we'll say, oh, background color. And the background color is what? It looks like it is this color. Right? So we'll do an octothorpe here, and then we'll paste this and do that. Padding. Okay. Instead of margin. Because what margin does versus padding is it really like affects the way things look. And I think the text is white. Yeah. Color. White. Cool. So dot main, and then we'll do h1, and we'll say transform, scale, and I'll say 1.5 times. Right? Oh, no. 1.2. Ooh. Font size, and I'll say this is going to be 700. And body needs to be inter sans serif. Font weight. Font size MBN. No. Font weight MDN. Yeah. And maybe it's because I didn't save this. No. Is it already 700? Yeah. Okay. He wants it a little bit bigger though. Text size CSS. Two EM, 3 EM, no, 2.5 maybe. Okay. I don't need this main h1. We can just make this into an unordered list, right? And we'll do the same thing here. But not 1.5. We'll say 1.5 EM. That's fine. What am I missing? Maybe if I do a height 100%, doesn't change a single thing. Height, it's 100 viewing height. Yeah. Huh. So if I say auto, it changes it so that it does this. $100 viewing height, maybe? Okay, so nothing changes. I'm just going to leave this like this for now. It is not an important detail. Let's see what the difference is here.
All right, let's go ahead and make this into a main element. This is another semantic HTML element.
Right. Why do I keep forgetting my semantic HTML? I used a div. That's my bad.
And it represents the main section of our app here, so we will call it that. And it looks like it really only has 2 elements in it. It's got this H1 and an unordered list with 5 list items. So that should be relatively straightforward. And it says fun facts about React. We have our unordered list. And I'm going to hit Option Shift down to create copies of those so I don't have to type them out manually every time. And then I will actually go ahead and just copy and paste the text from the Figma file. So you don't need to sit and watch me do that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, let me move this over just a tiny bit.
Jordan Walker.
And let's hit refresh.
No, walk.
Okay, that's a good start. Let's get some of the design aspects going here.
Cool.
I've got my main element, and I think I feel okay styling that as the main element because I will probably only have one. Well, I know that I'll only have one. And we will give it a background color, which we can go ahead and grab from the Figma file. Okay, and well, this highlights some issues here. Now,
Yeah.
I haven't set up my body or my main element to be a full height. And it looks like maybe it's a collapsing margin. I'm guessing this H1 has a margin on top, which is causing this whole section to collapse down below. So let's give, first of all, the main section a height of, let's try 100%. Yeah, sometimes that doesn't work. Maybe if I give my body a height of,
yeah, see, it's the same issue that I was dealing with.
Let me refresh this. Well, okay, you know what? I think this is highlighting another problem that I was planning on addressing later. So
yeah, I like how
now
same thought process.
Actually move
I'll figure it out later.
To the body so that it does cover everything.
That's amazing.
Okay, and that'll be a good enough start. We'll fix this a little bit later, but it did highlight the fact that what we had here is our main section is not taking up the entire body here. In a couple of screencasts from now, we'll see why that's a problem, but for now, I'm just going to put my background color on the body. Okay, and I probably actually don't need this height of 100% right now. We'll come back to that later. Oh, however, I do want to give it some padding, and it looks like from the design I have about 55 pixels. It says 57. We'll just go ahead with 57.
Interesting to me.
The top and bottom, and then about 27
I don't know
pixels
where this
on
is.
the left and right. And, well, you know what? I think that margin, this looks a little too much. I'm going to guess that the margin of my
Am I missing something
is
here?
a little bit high. Let me just check that. If I set this to margin 0, yeah, that normalizes it a little bit more. So instead of selecting all H1s, let's go here and give this a class name. And similar to the last one, I'll say this is the main block and it's the title element. And that way I can be a little more specific about which H1 I want. And again, I need to refresh this in order for that.
I'm not seeing where he's getting his dimensions from.
Awesome. Okay, the sizing is looking good. Let's get our color.
I'll have to explore the Figma file a little bit more by the time for the next time.
Here also has a font size of about 39 pixels, and everything else needs to be white. Maybe I'll just.
What is this here? Oh, okay, that's the view. Regular at 16. Height is 39. Margin. Am I missing something? I'm not sure. Okay, anyways, we'll go back.
Color the entire section here. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, awesome. Well, now that I have removed the margin from my title, it looks like my unordered list is bumping a little bit close to my title. rather than giving my title a margin bottom to push it down, I personally prefer to have elements push themselves away from other elements, if that makes any sense. And when I see this, I think of the unordered list as being too close to the H1 as opposed to the other way around. That might not make any sense. That's just how my mind is working. I'm going to give my unordered list a class name. Let's say this is main dash dash, we'll say facts. And we will select our main facts, and I'll give it a margin top of, it looks like the design says 46 pixels. Okay, now actually I just looked at the Figma file and noticed that our title actually has a slight change to the letter spacing.
Okay.
So I'm just going to copy and paste that here, and yeah, that compresses our H1 a little bit.
I see.
Quite a bit. So we will go ahead and leave it
But I
there.
still don't see where it is
Sometimes
in this
these
app.
rules like this are really easy to overlook if you aren't looking closely in the Figma design. Something that's really nice is I can actually just copy all of the rules if I need to and paste them here, and then I can decide which ones are actually...
Okay, so like there's literally a full list of designs then. Huh. Full thing of design. What in the world? Oh, did I find it? Okay. Look at that. It was under the inspect tab, and look at me. Look at me go. I can cover. Oh, found it. We found it. All right. So it was under the inspect tab right here on the top right hand corner. And here are all of our rules. Cool. All right. So for the next one.
Or are necessary. Now, I already have that one. I can just comment these out. This one's technically making a slight difference. I'm not terribly worried about it. The font size we already specified. Font weight of bold is already the default. Font style of normal, and so forth. I can get rid of some of these as well. But we can see this one actually did make quite a bit of a difference, so it's good that we put it in there. Okay, now these are really close together, so I'm going to select all of the list items under main facts. I'm doing this just so I don't have to give a class name to every single LI or give the same class name to every single list item there. And actually, let's go ahead and do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to copy some of these font styles that we have inside of Figma and see if any of them made a difference. I don't need that. That's not making a difference. That's already the default. That's already the default. That makes a tiny difference. Maybe I'll leave it in there. It did separate them a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, however, I'm going to have to apply some padding to these. So let's give a little bit of padding. There's a relatively new CSS property called padding block that allows me to only specify the padding on the top and bottom in one go. Let's start with 10 pixels and see how that looks. And yeah, that looks fairly accurate. Another thing I'm noticing is that the text is actually wrapping around here, and mine is not. It's going all the way to the right.
It doesn't like padding block though.
Much of a problem. If I did want to fix that, I could probably just apply a max width on my list items. That way it's not taking up the entire left to right. Maybe something like 400 pixels. And yeah, that seems to wrap it a little bit.
Yeah.
And awesome. This is a great start. We're only missing two minor things. We're going to change these colors of these bullets to be the same color as our logo up here. And we're also going to add this little React logo over here to the right.
Okay.
However, both of these have a little bit of a gotcha to them, so I thought it could be good to do them each as a separate assignment, and that is what we're going to cover next.
Okay.
Originally, my plan was to give you a challenge to color the bullets and make them just a little bit larger like we have in the design. However, as I was researching this, I came across a relatively new CSS property, or rather pseudo selector, that makes this challenge extremely easy. So just this once, you can sit back and relax. I'm going to show you just how easy this is. There's a little bit of a gotcha with it, but I included a slide here that shows you the MDN docs for the marker pseudo element. And believe it or not, this very specifically selects the bullets on list items.
Okay.
And even look at this example. It's changing the color and it's making it a little bit larger with its font size. That's exactly what we want to do.
Very
You
nice.
can click this slide to go check out the docs, poke around these allowable properties, and of course, you should probably play with this a little bit. But fortunately, this is a really easy thing for us to implement. I'm just going to copy this and add my pseudo element selector for marker. One
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind is that this is not accepted by all browsers. However, Safari, Firefox, and newer versions of Chrome have all adopted the marker pseudo element selector, and I'm
Okay.
certain as time passes, this is going to become even more widely accepted, and therefore I feel pretty confident using this method for accomplishing this task. So, simply enough, I can change the font size to, let's say, something like 1.4 rem, and sure enough, that made our bullets a little bit larger. Now, as I was playing with this, I noticed that if we get too large, let's say 3 rem, things become pretty misaligned. And at least at this time, when I was researching, I could not find a good way to realign these bullets with the text. So in my playing around, I found that 1.4 made the bullets larger without getting them misaligned with the text.
Okay.
So for now, we have that limitation. I'm just going to work within that and say the font size is 1.4 rem. It's not quite as large as what we have here, but that's okay. And then again, simply enough, I'm just going to go take the color of our text here. This is the blue color that we want, and stick it right here as our color. And sure enough, we have the blue color on the bullets. Easy peasy. Well, I hope you didn't become too comfortable letting me do all the work, because in the next screencast, we are going to add this logo. And by we, I, of course, mean you in
Nice.
a challenge.
Sounds
So
good.
that's what we'll do in the next screencast.
Okay, cool. So the challenge is to praise. So let's see. We'll
I
play the
actually
video
debated
and then we'll
a little
hear.
bit whether or not I should include this as a real challenge for this section, only because it touches on some CSS that you may not be super familiar with. But in the end, I settled on remembering that you guys are capable and you can use Google to your advantage just like a real developer. So here it is. I decided to add it in. The
Okay,
challenge
perfect.
is to place that gray React logo in the background. We have that logo here under images as React icon large.png.
Okay.
Something important to know about this icon is that it is actually half of the React logo. It looks from the design like maybe it's a full React logo that's just bleeding off the page, but if you look closely, once you put this React icon large on your actual page, you'll notice that it's only half of a logo. At first, that threw me off. That just had to do with the way that I exported it from Figma. Honestly, I think it makes our job a lot easier as we're placing it on the page. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. One last little piece of advice I'll give you is to add this background image to the main element. It probably would work just fine to add it to the entire body element, but I'm going to be doing it to main, so you might as well do it to the main element as well. Again, Google is a developer's best friend, so don't be afraid to use Google while you're trying to solve this challenge. Pause now and work on adding this background image.
All right. I think this should be not too challenging of a task, but who knows? We'll see. So we're going to place the React logo in the background. And it says don't use an image element, but rather set it as the background image of the main component. So we're in here and we'll say background image. No. Image. And we're going to go with React icon large .png, right? Because we gotta go into images first and then have, because we're in styles.css, we step into images and then we do React icon large.png. Okay, maybe I need to save, run. Background image mdn. Well, let's see here. What does it say? Oh, and we need a URL. Okay. And it's capital URL? No, lowercase. URL. Oh, there we go. Okay. And it says here, background repeat. Background repeat. No repeat. Nice. Okay. Background position. Well, let's see. Oh, maybe position. Top, left, center. Center. Relative, okay. Top, 2575. Bottom, right. This bottom. So center, right, maybe? Bottom, then right. Right, then bottom. Bottom, then right. Top, right. So I don't think the edge offset values, I don't think it's going to matter too much. So we'll just say center, right. There we go. And I think it's a little bigger. Transform. We'll scale it up. 1.1. 1.2. Oh, if I scale it up, main, it scales up main altogether. Okay. Where's my image? I wonder if I can change. We'll see what this person says.
Okay, hopefully you found this wasn't actually that big of a deal. So I'm going to add first the background image to my main element here. I'm going to use the URL function so I can specify the location for these images. This is relative to my style.css file, so I'm going to say /images/react icon large.png. Okay, and we see that it automatically is repeating around the entire page. So
yeah.
That's where the background repeat comes in, and we want to say no repeat. Of course, here by default, it puts it in the upper left of our page, or rather the main element. And this is where background position comes in. Now, background position is actually a combination of background position X and background position Y.
Yeah.
In fact, let's start out there. We can say background position X, that's my position to the left and right. I want to push it all the way to the right.
Yeah.
This is where having half of a logo becomes pretty handy for us because it automatically looks like it's bleeding off the side of the page. And then with background position Y, we can specify something like top, which is where it is now, or bottom. Bottom, I think, is a touch too low, although center is maybe a touch too high. I can also use percentages, so we can split the difference and say something like 75%. And now that we've seen these as two separate properties, I actually can just combine these and say background position, which is background position X, and then I'll use a space and then Y of 75%, and that simplifies it a bit.
Cool.
If I really wanted to, I could use the shorthand background property, which would be background, and then I would just copy and paste this one first, space, this one, space, this one. Honestly, I always forget what the background property is short for, so I'm actually going to leave these as three separate properties.
Sounds
so
good.
that in the future, it's really easy for me to remember what each of those pieces means. And awesome, this represents a culmination of everything that we've learned so far about React. Let me go ahead and clean up this challenge. Now, of course, we've been spending a bit of time in CSS land here. And as I've mentioned, I still think that's a really important thing to do. Even though our main focus in this course is to learn React, it's really important to synthesize some of that other information that you have learned in the past so that it doesn't become stale to you and you just forget it. That being said, in the next screencast, let's spend some time looking back at everything that we did learn about React, because that's actually what we're here to learn. And at the same time, we'll take that opportunity to have a quick quiz and to look at a self-assessment project that you can do on your own. So that's what we'll be doing next.
Sounds good. A solo project. Let's see how long this is. I have 10 minutes left here. So I am noticing that we only have about, we have a little bit more than 10 minutes on videos. So it might be worthwhile, depending on what this guy says here, because we will then have to redeploy our Netlify app. It might be a good place to host like the next video, the next section. And so then we will do a recap to go over everything, and then like things will tie along together.
You've done a
and we can
great
move
job
forward.
so far
I
in
think
this
this is
course.
going to probably
Before you
be
just
the way that
plow
we move
ahead
forward.
to the next section, it's time for a solo project. This is meant to be a chance for you to flex your new React skills that you've been learning about so far in this section, but this time without the training wheels. And there's going to be a few of these throughout this React course, and these projects serve a really important purpose. They're meant to be a tool for you to gauge whether you are actually ready to keep moving forward in the curriculum or not. Unlike the challenges that I usually give you, I won't be walking you through a solution to this one. Instead, I'm going to be asking you to sort of go out on your own to build this project. That said, you're not actually completely on your own. We've got a thriving community here on Scrimba that's very willing to give feedback on your code. We'll talk more about that in just a minute, but first, I want you to keep in mind that no one here is giving you a grade for these projects like they would if you were in school. One of my personal objectives is to shift people's understanding of how learning occurs. In school, we're trained to complete the project for the grade. But here, you're completing the project to test yourself and to practice. So skipping one of these solo projects will really only deprive you of the best chance you have to test out your skills and to really help you decide if you grasp the concepts that we've been learning so far.
Yeah.
Okay, with that guilt trip behind us, let's actually take a look at what we're building. For this project, you're going to be building a digital business card. Everything here is static, and you can see there's actually two different designs that you can choose from. In fact, if you click the screenshot, it will send you to the Figma design file. You'll see that there's actually more designs, including a light mode version of these designs. And what you can do is just choose the one you like the best and build that one. When you get to that design file, make sure to click the little arrow at the top and choose to duplicate to your drafts. And as far as actually coding the project goes, I recommend that you just build your project here in Scrimba. On this screencast, if you look in the very lower right, you'll see a menu with 3 dots. If you click that, there's an option to fork this screencast to a new scrim. Doing that will make a duplicate of this project that you will have in your own account so that you don't have to worry about losing your work. You can see I really didn't give you a whole lot to work with here. We have a very basic HTML file that has our div with the ID of root, an empty index.js file, some very basic styles, and the 2 dependencies that you'll need to get React set up. Okay, let's come back to the requirements of this project. First of all, I want you to be building this project from scratch, which is why I'm not giving you any starter code at all. Next, and probably pretty obvious, I want you to fill in your own information for the digital business card here. And while you're building it, I want you to make separate components for the info section, which is what I'm calling this whole top half up here. The about section, which is really just this header and a paragraph. The interest section, which is another header and a paragraph. And a footer section, which has the social icons. While you're working on this solo project, make sure to share your work. In fact, you don't even need to wait until you're completely finished with the project. You can be asking for code reviews and help all along the way. If you click the Discord icon here, it will open the Scrimba Discord server specifically to a channel called I Built This, but in reality, you can share your project in any of the channels that make sense to do so in. And then for anyone who is learning in public and likes to use Twitter, you can click this Twitter icon, which will open Twitter and pre-populate a new tweet where you can include a link to your project so that you can share it to the world. Cool. Okay, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's projects.
Very nice. So now that we have a good understanding, just completed a solo project from Scrimba. Check it out here. Any suggestions on how? Okay. So fairly standard boilerplate template. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. This sounds like it is a great spot for me to stop, because then what I will do is next video, I will start building this project, and then I can deploy this on Netlify. I will also share how maybe then what I will do is share how I upload things to YouTube, how I decide to share things online. And yeah, we'll figure it out the next time. Thank you so much for joining. Please, if you like this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you take a look at the description below, you'll see that my socials are there. I would really appreciate a follow. And yeah, so you guys have a good night, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye bye.